Imagine this. You're the king of pop, adored by millions, yet every time you look into a mirror, you see something sinister. Something that isn't you, but knows everything about you. Michael Jackson lived with this dark secret, a chilling shadow that followed him to his last days. Stay with us as we uncover the untold story of Michael's haunting battle with the reflection that threatened to consume him. The year was 1988, and Michael Jackson was at the height of his career. Thriller had shattered records, and his electrifying performances captivated millions. Yet, beneath the dazzling lights and moonwalks, Michael often spoke of an unsettling presence in his life. He mentioned the whisper in the mirror to close friends, a soft voice that only he could hear when alone in his private quarters at Neverland Ranch. Michael's estate was his dream come true. Sprawling landscapes, amusement park rides, and endless rooms filled with treasures from his tours. But one room, in particular, carried an aura that even Michael couldn't explain. His mirrored dance studio. Late at night, while practicing, he would catch glimpses of something in the mirrors. At first, it was subtle, a shadow behind him when no one else was in the room. But soon, it became clearer. A figure watching him, matching his every move, but with a haunting, unnatural grin. Michael confided in his sister Janet, saying, "It feels like it knows me, Janet, like it's me but not me." Janet brushed it off as exhaustion or stress. But Michael knew it was something more. Then one night, while reviewing choreography for his upcoming tour, the reflection didn't mimic his iconic spin. Instead, it stood still, staring straight at him. Michael froze. The reflection mouthed words he couldn't hear. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and a chilling wind swept through the room, though the windows were sealed shut. The king of pop was known for his fearless creativity, but in that moment he felt sheer terror. What was this reflection? A figment of his imagination, or a ghost from a world unknown? Michael couldn't shake the incident in the dance studio. Despite the glamour and chaos of his career, the encounter haunted him. He began avoiding the mirrored room, leaving it locked and untouched. But as he prepared for the Bad World Tour, his team insisted he use the studio for its impeccable acoustics. Reluctantly, Michael agreed, convincing himself it was just his imagination. One evening, rehearsals ran late. The crew left, but Michael stayed behind, determined to perfect his moves. Alone in the studio, he stood in front of the massive mirror. The air felt thick, and the silence was unnerving. As he started his routine, the faint sound of applause filled the room. Confused, he looked around, but no one was there. Then he saw it. His reflection was no longer synchronized with his movements. It began dancing on its own. Moves he hadn't choreographed, twisting and contorting unnaturally. Michael stepped back, heart pounding, but the reflection stepped closer to the glass, as if trying to break free. "Who are you?" Michael whispered, his voice trembling. The reflection tilted its head, smiled eerily, and mouthed the words, "I am you." The lights flickered again, and the sound of faint laughter echoed. The temperature dropped sharply, and Michael's breath became visible. Just as panic set in, the studio door slammed shut behind him, locking him inside. Suddenly, music began to play. Not his, but a distorted, haunting melody that sounded like a dark parody of his hits. The reflection began to moonwalk toward him, its grin widening as its eyes glowed a faint, unnatural blue. Michael backed away, his iconic confidence replaced by sheer terror. He stumbled over a speaker stand, falling to the floor as the reflection reached out, pressing its hands against the mirror as if trying to break through. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the music stopped. The lights steadied, and the reflection returned to normal. Michael scrambled to his feet and bolted from the room, vowing never to enter it again. But whatever was in that mirror wasn't done with him. Michael couldn't escape the lingering dread from the studio incident. As he threw himself into the demands of the Bad World Tour, the energy of performing temporarily dulled his fears. But strange occurrences began to follow him, no matter where he went. During a concert in Tokyo, the first incident happened. Michael was midway through performing Smooth Criminal when the spotlight on him flickered erratically. At first, the crowd thought it was part of the show, cheering wildly. But Michael felt something off. As he executed his signature lean, his shadow on the stage moved, but not in sync with him. It danced differently, fluid yet sinister, twisting and stretching as if it had a life of its own. Michael faltered, breaking the illusion of the lean, and quickly transitioned to another move. The shadow, however, continued its eerie, independent performance, mimicking none of the choreography. The crowd roared, oblivious to the anomaly, but Michael felt his pulse race. The shadow stopped abruptly, turning its head toward him. For a brief, horrifying moment, he swore its glowing blue eyes locked with his. He almost froze mid-performance, but years of stage training kicked in. He powered through the song, though every moment felt like an eternity. After the concert, his longtime manager Frank approached him backstage. "Mike, are you okay? You looked distracted out there," Frank said, concern etched on his face. Michael hesitated, wiping sweat from his brow. "It's nothing. Just tired," he lied. But it wasn't nothing. Over the next few shows, the occurrences escalated. Equipment malfunctioned around him. Stage lights dimmed or burst without warning. And Michael felt an unshakable presence, like someone was always watching him. One night, after a show in London, he sat alone in his dressing room, staring at his reflection in the mirror. He was too exhausted to care about the fear anymore. He needed answers. "Why are you following me?" he whispered. The reflection didn't respond at first, just stared back. But then, it tilted its head, just as it had in the studio, and smiled. "You can't run from yourself," it said, the voice distorted and distant. Michael leapt back, knocking over his chair. The mirror began to crack, a web of fractures spiraling outward from where his reflection's eyes had glowed. The laughter he'd heard in the studio returned, louder this time, reverberating through the room. He grabbed his jacket and ran, leaving the dressing room and the broken mirror behind. The reflection's parting words echoed in his mind. "You can't run from yourself." Michael Jackson's life had turned into a surreal maze of fear and confusion. The haunting incidents had intensified. Whether he was at a concert, in his studio, or even at home, the sinister presence never left him. It was no longer confined to mirrors or shadows. It had seeped into his dreams. He was back at Neverland Ranch, sitting in his private movie theater. The screen flickered with clips of his life, moments of triumph, joy, and music. Then, without warning, the footage twisted. His reflection appeared on the screen, but this time it wasn't just mimicking him. The figure stood up, stepped out of the screen, and started walking toward him. "You can't run forever," it whispered, its voice a low echo of Michael's own. Michael jolted awake, his heart pounding. The dream was so vivid, so real, it felt like a memory. He looked around his room, drenched in sweat, trying to catch his breath. The digital clock beside his bed flickered, the numbers changing erratically before settling on 3:33 a.m. The sound of soft music wafted through the air. It was Man in the Mirror, but he hadn't turned it on. Slowly, he got out of bed, the hardwood floor cool against his bare feet. The music seemed to be coming from his private studio. As he approached the studio door, it swung open on its own. Inside, the room was bathed in a dim, eerie glow. His reflection was waiting for him, sitting at the piano. "Come in, Michael," it said, its tone almost inviting. "It's time we talked." Michael hesitated but stepped inside. The door slammed shut behind him. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice trembling. The reflection stood, its movements fluid and unnatural. "You've always wanted to be the best, haven't you? To achieve perfection, to be remembered forever. That comes with a price." Michael's mind raced. Was this some manifestation of his own fears, his guilt, or something worse? "I didn't ask for this," he shouted. The reflection smirked. "Oh, but you did. Every time you stepped into the spotlight, every time you pushed yourself to outdo the last performance, you called to me. And now I'm here to stay." The lights in the studio flickered wildly. Michael's trophies and awards rattled on their shelves, some crashing to the floor. The figure moved closer, its glowing blue eyes piercing into Michael's soul. You can't run from me, Michael. I am you. And soon the world will see the real you. Michael backed away, his heart pounding. No, I won't let you take over. The reflection laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the room. You don't have a choice. Michael Jackson's confrontation with his dark reflection had pushed him to the edge. The world continued to cheer for the king of pop, oblivious to the battle he was waging behind closed doors. But Michael knew he couldn't keep the facade for much longer. The shadow had grown stronger. It no longer appeared just in mirrors or dreams. It followed him everywhere, on stage, in the recording studio, even in the midst of his fans. He would catch glimpses of it, a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision, always watching, always waiting. One night, as Michael prepared for a private performance, the reflection made its boldest move yet. The grand hall was empty, save for a single grand piano and Michael. This was his sanctuary, a place to pour his heart into his music, away from prying eyes. But tonight, as he played the opening notes of "You Are Not Alone," the piano keys beneath his fingers began to feel icy. He stopped, staring at the keys. The reflection appeared at the far end of the hall, slowly walking toward him. "You can't keep ignoring me," it said, its voice layered with Michael's own. Michael stood, fists clenched. "What do you want from me?" The reflection tilted its head. "I want to take what you've always feared losing, the spotlight. Your legacy, your soul." "No!" Michael's voice echoed through the hall. "You're nothing but a part of my mind, my fears. You're not real." The reflection laughed, a sinister sound that filled the vast space. "Oh, Michael, I'm as real as the applause you crave, as the adoration of your fans. I'm the price of your fame. And now I'm ready to collect." The lights in the hall began to dim, one by one, until only the spotlight on Michael remained. The reflection moved closer, stepping into the light. For the first time, Michael saw its face clearly. It was his, but twisted and dark, with glowing blue eyes and an expression of malice. "Let's see who they'll love more," it said. Suddenly, Michael felt an overwhelming force pulling at him. His chest tightened, his vision blurred, and he fell to his knees. The reflection loomed over him, its presence suffocating. But then something inside Michael snapped. "No!" he screamed, summoning all his strength. He stood, the spotlight intensifying around him. "You will not take this from me. I am Michael Jackson, and I will not let fear or darkness define me." The reflection faltered, its form flickering. The light around Michael grew brighter, pushing back the shadows. The hall filled with music, not from the piano, but from Michael himself. He began to sing, his voice powerful and unwavering. Each note seemed to weaken the reflection, its form dissolving into the light. Finally, with one last triumphant note, the reflection shattered into a million fragments of light, disappearing into the darkness. Michael collapsed to the floor, exhausted but victorious. The hall was silent once more, the piano untouched. He sat there for a moment, catching his breath. The battle was over, but the lesson was clear. His greatest enemy had always been within, and his triumph came not from denying it, but from facing it head-on. From that day forward, Michael performed with a renewed passion, embracing both the light and the shadows that made him who he was. The king of pop continued to captivate the world, his music forever echoing the resilience of the human spirit. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey into Michael Jackson's untold story. As the king of pop faced his darkest fears, he taught us all that even in the face of the unknown, resilience and courage can shine through. If you found this story as captivating as we did, make sure to subscribe for more gripping tales about the lives of the legends you thought you knew. Hit that like button and share your thoughts below. Your engagement keeps these stories alive. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.